All set? Well, thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I am joined today by Rob Fever, Director of Student Financial Services with the Department of Education. We are here today to provide an update on the province's financial approach to student financial support in light of today's announced tuition changes from Memorial University. I'd like to point out for the media and for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador that earlier this year, government was approached by Memorial University with a proposal that would have seen tuitions double. Even with this doubling of tuition, they wanted government to continue providing the $68.4 million in tuition freeze funding without a tuition freeze. If the doubling of tuitions happened without government reducing the tuition freeze funding, we would not have been in a position to redirect some of that money to the enhanced grant program we are announcing today. Even with this change, Memorial remains one of the most affordable universities in the country, still well below the average annual tuition nationally. We respect the will of the Board of Regents at Memorial University to set tuition as they see fit, and we trust that Memorial has balanced its tuition plans with a need to maintain competitive standing relative to other universities. There are some who have claimed that our government does not value affordable post-secondary education because of these actions. Let me be crystal clear on this point. Nothing could be further from the truth. While our approach to post-secondary funding is changing, our commitment to keeping post-secondary education affordable and accessible has not wavered. In the 2021-22, the provincial government will provide an operational grant to Memorial University of over $359 million, including the Faculty of Medicine and the existing tuition offset grant. This accounts for 73% of Memorial's operations. By 2026-27, the provincial government will provide an operational grant of over $290 million, which will account for 59% of Memorial's operations. This is still well above the national average of 45%. Memorial University continues to receive the tuition offset funding of $68.4 million, but this will be phased out over 5 years. With the actions that we are announcing today, we will build on the most attractive and most competitive student financial support package in the country. First, we are announcing the introduction of a new needs-based grant program, the Tuition Relief Grant Program. This program will be launching in August of 2022 in time for the tuition increase. It will support low and middle income Newfoundland and Labrador students and families by providing eligible students with a non-repayable grant of up to an additional $3,450 per year, which is over and above existing student aid programs. $3,450 is the amount that Memorial is increasing their annual tuition. So for those below the base income bracket, the grant should offset the bulk of the tuition increase. For those who qualify for a portion of the funding, the grant will still offset a significant portion of the tuition increase. In addition to this new grant, we also recognize that there will be individuals who will not qualify due to higher income who will need enhanced loan support. As a result, we will be increasing the weekly student loan limit from the current $40 per week to $100 per week. This matches the current student grant limit of $100, which is the highest such grant in Canada, for a total student aid allotment of up to $200 per week. These changes taken together are significant financial support for Newfoundland and Labrador post-secondary students. I also want to highlight another program that is designed to provide significant financial support to students in this province who receive the provincial student loan. Through the debt reduction grant program, many students will qualify for 100% debt reduction of the provincial student loan. Students do not have to apply for this program. It is automatically assessed through student aid and applied once a student enters the repayment phase of post-graduation. Eligibility is based on factors including graduation, the number of semesters where full course load was completed, and the amount of student aid received. Students who take full course load every semester who graduate within 10 years of starting their degree could see the entirety of the provincial student debt forgiven upon graduation. Taken together, the changes announced today build on what was already the most generous student financial support package in the country. These programs will ensure that every Newfoundland and Labrador student, regardless of their income, will have the opportunity to access a world-class post-secondary education in this province. This is something that we will always support. And we will now turn it over to the media if you have any questions.
Thank you, Minister. There are 3 media in person and 4 joining by phone. The question and answer session will be conducted in 2 rounds, where each reporter will have the opportunity to ask 1 question and 1 follow-up. Following this, I'll ask each reporter if they have a final question. Our first questions are from Mark Quinn with CBC. Please go ahead and make your way to the mic.
Thank you. Good day. If I understand correctly, this is going to cost, the new student aid is going to cost $18 million per year more than what was formerly paid for student aid. So it means that once you've phased out the $68 million grant, the government's cutting $50 million from what it gives to the university. Is that correct?
So the existing tuition freeze program was directed to all students based on the current tuition. The new and enhanced expanded grant program that's over and above existing student aid programs, including grants and loans, will be directed for Newfoundland and Labrador students. We are ensuring that lower and middle income students will receive the benefit of the grant, and even higher, middle to higher income students will have access to the loan program, which at the end of the day will qualify for 100% provincial loan forgiveness.
Traditionally, I think it's been more expensive for students from rural Newfoundland to come to MUN. They don't live with their families. They incur the costs of living expenses more. Are you confident that this increase won't affect them more, perhaps, than people who live in St. John's?
This is designed to assist students throughout Newfoundland and Labrador, regardless of which community they come from. I know that the Student Aid Division and the department and government as a whole has put a great deal of focus into ensuring that Newfoundland and Labrador students can avail of an affordable education at Memorial University. Rob, did you want to add anything else to that?
And with the need assessment model, the fact that you have to move away from home to study, you are incurring more cost for living. So in terms of how the disbursement model now currently works, the higher the need you get, in terms of that's when you tip over into the grant program. So for those who are at the highest ends of the need assessment process, they're getting nearly 100% grant to pay for those extra costs under the current model. This model won't change that.
Thank you.
Our next questions are from Patrick Butler with Radio Canada. Please go ahead and make your way to the mic.
I have a question about eligibility. You mentioned in the technical briefing about how it would just be students who are registering after once the 2022-2023 school year begins that would be eligible. There are tuition increases for other students, for the students who are currently registered. They're not as drastic, but they are increases. Are there any changes that affect those students?
Well, yeah, I can speak to that a little, and then Rob can certainly add to it. So the increase in tuition to $600 a course starts in next September, not this coming September. So the grant is designed to assist those students. We do understand that Memorial has put a 4% increase per course for existing students, and I believe that at $255 a course, it amounts to about $10 a course. I believe that's correct, Rob, and you can certainly add to that.
No, that's exactly right. So this program is targeting that highest level of tuition increase. So the 4%, the current program, as it currently exists, is well positioned to absorb such a small increase.
And my second question is for the Minister. There have been, now for a number of years, 2 provinces in Canada that have significantly lower tuition rates for their residents, Quebec and Newfoundland Labrador. Why is it that Newfoundland Labrador is unable to continue to offer that to residents here, while in another province it continues to be the norm?
So the increase in tuition announced by Memorial University today will still see Memorial well below the national average for tuition. It will still be a very competitive university nationally. It is a world-recognized university for many of its offerings, and certainly well-recognized across the country. It's a solid academic institution in terms of engineering, business studies, medical and nursing, and ocean technologies. But even with the tuition increases, let's keep in mind that the international students, the national average is about $32,000 a year for international students. Memorial is well below that for Canadian students, well below the national average as well, and for Newfoundland and Labrador students. So the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador, and Memorial University will still be heavily subsidizing tuitions. If you look at the average cost of providing the education is about $22,000 a year. Even at the new tuition rates, the people of this province, including the university and government, will be heavily subsidizing education for all students, but more so for Newfoundland and Labrador students. With this new enhanced, expanded grant program, Newfoundland and Labrador students will receive the benefit of that additional grant program.
Our next questions are from Glenn Whiffen with The Telegram. Please go ahead and make your way to the mic.
Hi. So the tuition relief grant program would cost about $18 million annually. Do you have numbers on with the increased weekly loan limits and the debt reduction program? Do you have any numbers on what that will cost from what it is, like, say, currently to what it will be in a few years?
Rob?
Moving to the $100 a week limit is something we've done in this previous past year. It's the highest that the loan limit has been for close on about 13, 14 years. So we did see a bit of an uptick in applications this past year over previous year, but it's probably COVID related. So we're still analyzing the data and experience from this past year, what $100 a week meant. We're not envisioning that there will be much impact on the existing student aid envelope for loans and grants, even at the $100 amount. When I average it, what happened in 1920 and 2021. So we'll be putting those numbers and crunching those numbers for the budget as we get forward in 2022.
So what is the number for previous years?
Oh, sorry, I wanted to add to
Oh,
that a
sorry.
little bit, Rob, just to provide some additional context. You know, we've got a good idea based on current uptake on the student grant program that based on the new tuition, what the uptake will be. The only definitive way to say what that will be is once we start seeing the reality of the numbers of students applying. We're estimating for the grant program itself that the annualized cost will be about $18 million a year. In terms of you know, the student loan program, provincial student loan program, we'll have more solid numbers on that as people start to apply.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, thank you.
We will now go to the phones where we have 3 reporters. Mike Connors with NTV, please go ahead.
I guess I wanted to get your reaction. What do you say to the argument that, you know, the tuition freeze was a very simple way to keep the cost of university low, whereas now you're forcing more and more people through what seems to be a very complicated student aid system in order to qualify for this offset grant?
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael, for that question. I will say, you know, that the Student Aid Division has put a great deal of work into this program. And the additional grant program will not be complicated at all. There's no additional application for this. Once a student goes through through student aid, you know, to be assessed whether it's for the Canadian student grant or loans or provincial, they'll automatically be looked at for this particular grant. So it doesn't put any undue or extra work on the shoulders of students. I will repeat that earlier this year, before government ever considered reducing the tuition freeze funding, we received the proposal from Memorial University that would have seen tuitions double while they maintained the tuition freeze funding. It was at that point that government looked at it and made the decision that instead of putting the money into administration at the university, that we would direct it to Newfoundland and Labrador students in the form of an enhanced grant program.
And just further to that point, from what I understand from the university's end, this increase in tuition will only cover the money that's been cut from the tuition freeze grant. But I guess, so basically they're just sort of keeping level with this tuition freeze. I mean, does taking away the grant still cause problems for them in terms of dealing with their crumbling infrastructure and other issues on campus?
No, you know, we are, even in the first year of this, we currently provide 76% of the operating costs at Memorial University through the Operation Grant. This year or next year, with the first year of the phase out, it'll go from 76% of their operating costs to 73%. The following year, it will phase out a little more. Even at the end of fully phasing out, the 5 years of phasing out the tuition freeze funding for Memorial, they'll still be 59 to 60% of their operating costs will be covered by the operating grant. The national average is 45%. You know, the work now begins for Memorial to find creative ways to attract investment. And can that be done? Absolutely. It is done in other financial institutions across the country. It is done at the Marine Institute here. The operating costs at the Marine Institute versus the funding they require is considerably less than through the entirety of Memorial itself. You know, they get a lot of partnership with the business community, and you know, their simulators and other equipment at the Marine Institute, for example, is often donated. You know, so part of this is looking at the other levers. It cannot simply be the money that government provides the university or the money that students provide the university. They have to get creative in finding other sources of revenue, as other universities do, or as the Marine Institute does. And they have to look at efficiencies within the university. You know, it is not sustainable for the provincial government and the people the taxpayers of Newfoundland and Labrador to continue to subsidize Memorial University at 76% when universities across the country are at an average of 45%.
Our next questions are from Noah Shepherd with VOCN. Please go ahead.
There are concerns that the increase will take away MUN's competitive edge in attracting international students. How is the government going to ensure that MUN remains competitive outside of Canada?
Within Canada, the average tuition for international students for undergraduate programs is $32,000 a year. I believe MUN announced that they were going to go to $20,000 a year. You know, it's well below the national average, and it's on par with the Atlantic average. When you look at the fact that Memorial is a stellar academic institute, you know, the business courses, the ocean sciences courses, the nursing, medical programs at Memorial University, and the engineering programs rank well up there with other Canadian academic institutions. And, you know, you look at the ocean sciences, for example, is I think ranks probably the third in the world. So we have a very, very solid academic institution in this province, well below the Canadian average in terms of international tuition rates. You know, I believe Memorial will still attract international students, but you know I know that they've been looking at working with recruitment agencies and so on to attract even more.
Will the provincial government be involved in any way in helping in that recruitment process?
Memorial University, we are looking at greater autonomy for Memorial University. We are always here to assist Memorial University, even when they receive greater autonomy. But we will be looking at changing the Memorial University Act, which was recommended by the Public Post-Secondary Review, as well as by the PERT Review, to give Memorial University greater autonomy. With greater autonomy comes greater accountability, of course, but we are always there to assist with any efforts, including international recruitment. And I will point out that the provincial government, in addition to you know, what Memorial University will do in terms of recruitment, the provincial government has an immigration strategy that they've been speaking of publicly and have made some announcements on, and work continues in that regard. I know Minister Byrne has done a great deal of work, and the officials in that department, and you will continue to see efforts and initiatives put forward by the provincial government to attract newcomers to Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thank you.
Our next questions are from Emily Deming with All Newfoundland Labrador. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. If the Marine Institute, as you mentioned, is a model going forward in offsetting costs by attracting private or business partnerships and investment, do you expect that then naturally market forces would direct in the future what programs grow and which stagnate in Memorial? It seems like the province is already working, I believe, in the November legislature to sort of come up with a new, slightly more hands-off model for dealing with Memorial, and that seems to jive with that, kind of letting it go to the market as opposed to the province deciding what's important for our industries and what isn't.
The majority of academic institutions across the country have autonomy or greater autonomy. Memorial is looking for that autonomy as well, but you know that the Marine Institute, you know, that I had indicated earlier, have done a phenomenal job, as does Memorial University in many areas, but in terms of partnerships and investment attraction, yes, the Marine Institute has done a phenomenal job. So I think all of our post-secondary institutions in the province can look at that and see what the Marine Institute has done exceptionally well. We can look to other post-secondary institutions across the country to see what they're doing well. But, you know, greater autonomy for Memorial University doesn't impede their ability to look at investment attraction and other creative sources of revenue, as well as looking at being more efficient. And government has already taken some steps. Once Memorial has their autonomy, they can make the decisions on increasing the size of their footprint in the best interest of the university without falling back on government for supports. But we've frozen the footprint until they receive that autonomy, which we're aiming for November. We've also indicated that the Auditor General will have unfettered access, and Memorial University as well will be required to appear before Estimates Committee, and where the legislature can look at them line by line.
May I follow up on that?
Absolutely.
So would you look at in the future ever having a more targeted approach in the funding that does still flow to Memorial, in terms of if there are departments of the university that are considered necessary for the life of the province, but just do not attract the private sector resources or partnerships or alumni support, whatever happens going forward in the future, say like healthcare, teaching, social work, the kind of things that we do really need to keep the province afloat, but that just simply aren't going to likely attract the type of partnerships that the Marine Institute, say, can attract.
You know, as minister, and I think as government, we are prepared to look at, any initiatives that can strengthen the university or strengthen, even with their autonomy in terms of, we will still be providing close to $300 million a year once the phase out, the 5 years of phase out has been completed. So there's still a responsibility for government to ensure that the people of the province and the taxpayers of the province, that the investment is being utilized to the best advantage for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. So, we will still continue to have dialogue and discussion with Memorial, even with their increased and enhanced autonomy. They will have autonomy from government, and will be making more of those decisions. But as I said earlier, we are always open to a discussion with them and assisting them wherever possible.
Thank you.
I will now go back through each reporter to see if you have one final question. Mark Quinn with CBC. Do you have a final question?
I do, thank you. Yes, I wondered, my understanding is that this will cost $18 million more per year going forward, but I wonder how much are we spending on student aid now, like in the past few years annually, how much do we spend on student aid?
Current expenditure for student aid about $15.7 million for both the loans and the grants program, and that's been fairly stable for a number of years now.
Patrick Butler with Radio Canada. Do you have a final question?
Yeah, just one. Minister, what would you say to someone who, looking at the record of your government in the past number of months, all the major cuts seem to have come in education? I understand there was an announcement made about NALCOR, but we're not sure how much that money that will actually save. Axing the NLASD, now this significant reduction to MUN. Are we on the right path here?
I believe we are. I sat in the Department of Finance for over 3 years. I'm well aware of what needs to be done in this province, and under the guidance of Premier Fiore and the direction of Premier Fiore and my caucus colleagues, other government members, we have to work to ensure that we create that solid footing for Newfoundland and Labrador. If we are going to attract newcomers, if we're going to retain our population, if we're going to grow our economy, we need to ensure that we get our fiscal house in order. And, some of the initiatives that we are undertaking in the Department of Education will help in the strategic direction set forward by the Premier to ensure that Newfoundland and Labrador remains one of the best places to work, live, and raise a family.
Glenn Whiffen with the Telegram. Do you have a final question?
No, I'm good. Pass, please.
Mike Connors with NTV. Do you have a final question?
I'm good, thank you.
Noah Shepard with VOCM. Do you have a final question?
Yes, I do. We've heard the tuition increase for Memorial. Is there any indication of what this might mean for the College of the North Atlantic following suit?
This announcement today of enhanced student aid over and above what's already there is in direct response to the tuition increase at Memorial University. So at this particular point, these changes don't impact the College of the North Atlantic. It is specific to the decision by Memorial University to increase tuitions.
Thank you.
Emily Deming with All Newfoundland Labrador. Do you have a final question?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Minister, do you have any final comments for today?
Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody in the media for joining us. And I guess, to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, and in particular to the students in Newfoundland and Labrador, we are working to ensure that post-secondary education remains affordable. That is the goal of the government of Newfoundland and Labrador. And this program today is designed to ensure that lower and middle income families have access to an affordable education, and even the enhancements to the loan program to ensure that middle and higher income families also have access to supports. I wanted to thank everybody again for joining us today for this important announcement.
Thank you, Minister. Stay safe, everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy the rest of your day.